You walk into a room and suddenly become aware of your hands, your face, your voice, the way you're standing. You start thinking about how normal people act while forgetting how to act naturally yourself. And the strange part is, you weren't always like this. At some point, being yourself stopped feeling automatic and started feeling like a performance you had to manage. 2. Problem deep dive. You start rehearsing tiny things in your head. How to laugh, when to speak, how long eye contact should last, whether your reaction looked genuine enough. Conversations become less about connection and more about self-monitoring. Even when nobody is judging you, your brain behaves as if someone is, so you keep adjusting yourself in real time. You soften certain opinions, hide certain reactions, edit your tone halfway through sentences, and eventually, you stop feeling like a person experiencing life and start feeling like a person observing yourself experience life. That's why ordinary situations become exhausting. Going to a store, replying to messages, sitting in silence with someone. Nothing feels fully natural anymore, because instinct requires trust, and self-consciousness interrupts trust constantly. You can even feel it physically. Your body becomes tight. Movements feel deliberate. Your attention splits into two, one part trying to participate, the other watching yourself from the outside. Psychologists sometimes call this excessive self-monitoring, but emotionally, it feels more personal than that. It feels like you lost access to the version of yourself that used to move without thinking. And over time, this creates an identity crisis that's hard to explain. Because if every version of you feels partially constructed, which one is actually real? That question quietly follows you everywhere. 3. Reframe. But this didn't happen because you're fake, or shallow, or broken. In many cases, this pattern starts as adaptation. Your brain learned that paying close attention to yourself helped you stay socially safe. Maybe you grew up around unpredictable reactions. Maybe being misunderstood felt emotionally dangerous. Maybe acceptance depended on behaving correctly. So your nervous system became observant, careful, flexible. You learned how to read the room before expressing yourself, and that ability probably protected you at some point. The problem is, adaptations don't always turn off when the danger disappears. So eventually, your brain keeps analyzing yourself even when no real threat exists, like a smoke alarm that became too sensitive. Now every interaction feels important, every expression feels loaded, every mistake feels identity-defining. And slowly, calculated behavior replaces instinctive behavior, not because you're manipulative, but because your brain became overprotective, which leads to a strange contradiction. The more you try to control how you're perceived, the less natural you feel inside yourself. And the reason for that becomes clearer once you understand what self-consciousness actually does to the brain. 4. Psychological mechanism. Natural social behavior depends heavily on automatic processing. Your brain is designed to handle many interactions subconsciously. Tone, timing, facial expressions, flow. Normally, these things happen without deliberate effort. Like walking, you don't consciously calculate every step. But hyper-self-awareness interrupts automatic systems. The moment you start consciously monitoring behaviors that are supposed to be instinctive, the brain shifts activity into controlled processing. And controlled processing is slower, more effortful, more rigid. This is why people suddenly stumble over words when nervous, or forget how to act casual the moment they try to act normal. The brain cannot fully perform and fully observe itself at the same time. That split creates friction. A useful metaphor is trying to dance while staring into a mirror the entire time. The more you analyze every movement, the less fluid the movement becomes. Understanding this primary issue opens a door to practical solutions. 5. Practical framework. 1. Shift attention outward, not inward. The first step is retraining attention, because hyper-self-consciousness survives through constant internal monitoring. Your brain keeps checking. How am I doing? How do I sound? What do they think? Instead, practice directing attention outward. Focus on the environment, the other person's words, their tone, their expressions. This works because social flow improves when attention leaves excessive self-evaluation. For example, during a conversation, instead of monitoring how intelligent you sound, focus entirely on understanding what the other person actually means. Natural responses become easier when your brain stops auditing every sentence. 2. Stop correcting harmless behavior. A lot of calculated behavior comes from unnecessary correction. You laugh, then immediately wonder if it sounded weird. You speak, then mentally rewrite the sentence afterward. This trains your brain to distrust spontaneity. So begin noticing moments where you fix harmless behavior. Not dangerous behavior, not cruelty, just normal human imperfection. Then consciously leave it alone. For example, you tell a story awkwardly. Instead of apologizing or over-explaining, allow the awkwardness to exist. Why does this help psychologically? Because your nervous system learns that imperfect expression does not create catastrophe, and slowly the urge to over-control weakens. 3. Create spaces where performance is not necessary. The brain cannot stay authentic if it never experiences emotional safety. So you need environments where your identity is not constantly evaluated. Places where silence is allowed, where pauses are okay, where you don't have to optimize every reaction. For example, spend time with one person where the goal is not impressing them. No perfect stories, no clever responses, just presence. At first, this may feel uncomfortable, even boring, but underneath that discomfort, your nervous system is relearning safety without performance. 4. Let some interactions remain unfinished. People who overanalyze themselves often seek emotional closure after every interaction. They replay moments, trying to determine, did I do okay? But human interaction is naturally messy. Not every conversation ends perfectly. Not every reaction lands smoothly. So instead of mentally completing every social moment, practice leaving some ambiguity unresolved. You send the message and don't reread it 10 times. You leave the conversation without conducting a full internal review afterward. Why does this help psychologically? Because certainty addiction fuels self-monitoring. Your brain keeps analyzing because it believes perfect understanding is possible. But social life doesn't work like mathematics. Learning to tolerate ambiguity reduces compulsive self-analysis over time. 6. Integration. Maybe you were never truly bad at being yourself. Maybe you just became too aware of yourself to move naturally anymore, like someone trying to manually control every breath. The real self is usually not something you construct moment by moment. It's something that appears when constant correction quiets down. And that's important, because instinct is not the enemy. Not every reaction needs optimization. Not every behavior needs analysis. Some parts of you only return when they stop feeling watched. 7. Quiet, empowering close. There's a certain loneliness that comes from constantly managing yourself, from feeling like your personality is always under inspection, even by your own mind. But maybe your natural self was never gone. Maybe it was just buried underneath years of observation, years of adjustment, years of trying to become socially safe enough to relax. And slowly, you can begin undoing that. Not by forcing confidence, not by becoming louder, but by allowing yourself to participate in life, without constantly standing outside yourself at the same time. Because the version of you that feels most real usually appears the moment you stop trying so hard to monitor them.